Welcome to Redirect, Immigration Law and Perspectives, a weekly dive into the world of immigration law and its human consequences. I'm here with Matthew Archambault.
Hello.
Co-host and fellow immigration attorney in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Matthew.
Hey, so just a warning to our listeners. If you're listening to this, not like right away, we're recording this on February 28th of 2020. And if you're listening to this maybe like a year later and say the coronavirus thing was really bad,
just don't listen.
Yeah, just skip this one. Okay?
Yeah, zip this one out. Yeah, so anyhow, we talk about the coronavirus and how maybe if we didn't have a see-through wall, we could have avoided all this. Some good news and some bad news coming out of the courts. We didn't even get to all the things I wanted to talk about. I want to talk about Sonia Sotomayor. We didn't talk about that. Shout out to super producer Jeremiah Britt at Jeremiah Britt on the Twitter. He had an idea, which was to, because he's been bleeping the swears, and he asked if maybe he should bleep our swears with Trump saying the same swear. I said, let's try it. You want to give him something to work with? Like,
shit, motherfuckers, bitch, ass, damn.
I think we have all the swears that we need. First of all, I don't think you should be such a
pussy,
just in general.
Son of a bitch.
And I also think that most of the time this podcast is
shit.
So we'll see how that plays. Enjoy the show. We're talking to Matt Cameron, immigration attorney. Enjoy the conversation with Matt.
Matty C.
I'm not staying on with coronavirus.
What do you mean? What?
Get me out of there.
Nope. You've been infected.
All right.
Did you guys see this guy coughing on Fox News and sharing the water bottle with his daughter? What was that?
Who's that?
The guy who he'd been quarantined and apparently he's been tested a couple times. So he went on Fox News to talk about how like everything's fine, and he was coughing through the whole interview. Like, I swear to God, it's satire. That guy can't be real. But,
just had the best cruise.
Yeah. It's totally fine. The thing that convinced me that it's satire is he's got his daughter with him, and she's got a water bottle that she's drinking. And literally halfway through the interview, he takes it from her, takes a swig, and then gives it back to her. And I'm like, this can't be real. This is so fake. I don't know.
Was this Mike Pence?
It might as well have been.
Yeah, but Mike Pence is going to take care of everything.
That's true.
He loves science.
And they're looking at a lot of things, and they're doing a lot of things, and they're doing it tremendously well. So,
yep.
Are they praying? Is prayer involved? Because I'm all down for that.
Look, if you can pray the gay away, I don't know why you couldn't pray
for the spray away. Yeah.
Yeah.
He did say it's just going to go away on its own. That's something that Trump said. So we're waiting for miracles.
It warms
here.
up.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
when it starts to warm up.
Yes.
That's the way bacteria and virus works.
They hate it.
I don't know why we're arguing with science here.
When you get them hot,
it's a science.
When you heat them, they just dissolve. They disappear. It's like water. It's the same thing. Same concept.
Right. Yeah.
Let's just put everybody who believes that in a microwave.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I stick my hands over an open flame instead of washing them. I figure that will work better.
Are either of you guys legitimately concerned about the virus? Let's be real for a minute.
Yes, actually.
I'm washing my hands right now.
Just because I just found out about this 2-week thing about how we're all going to walk around with it for 2 weeks before anybody knows, that's kind of freaky.
Yeah.
I don't know. It doesn't sound good.
I was telling Matthew yesterday, I was kind of thinking, yeah, it's going to cause some shortages and problems in the supply chain. I understand that. But, you know, I was sort of a little bit in denial. And I talked to my friend who's an ER doctor, and he's like, oh, no, like we're all going to have it in like a month or two. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
Like, oh, no, yeah. Because you carry it and you're contagious before you know you have it.
Yeah.
So that's cool.
Well, my friend who works in a hospital said, and this really brought it home last night, that someone you know is going to die of this. So
right.
That's a good place to start, I guess, today.
Hey, I hope it's neither of you.
Right. I hope it's someone I kind of know.
It's something that you're only sad about for like maybe a couple minutes. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
The guy from like the coffee shop. Oh, that guy was a good guy.
I hope he
doesn't. That's him. What was his name? Anyways.
But you don't have to go to the funeral or anything, so.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah, I want to
Yeah.
avoid funerals. Plus, quite frankly, I want to avoid public places with a lot of
Yeah.
people. So,
A lot of sick people at those funerals. So
Matt, I guess this is like your dream, right? You have social anxiety, so
yeah,
this is your excuse. Like,
No.
I can't go to that.
I'll stay on the internet. Facebook for everybody.
Right. I guess I'm going to have to be on Twitter.
Mandatory Twitter.
Yeah.
That's right. Yes, please.
This is going to be a lot less funny when those people are actually dead.
Yeah, this
Yeah.
this show's not gonna hold up well.
Not going to age well. If you're revisiting this episode after people have died,
We've died also.
including one of us,
Or two.
we're sorry. These jokes,
They were funny at the time. They're funny now.
you're going to have to trust us that at the time,
Hilarious. We
was
killed
hilarious.
it.
anyhow,
Well, they're immigration lawyer jokes anyway, right? This is the kind of stuff we joke about all day. We're stuck this way.
right. And I think one of the big problems that you're starting to see is the wall should not have been see-through. Because, on the one hand, you want the see-through wall for the catapulting drugs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Are you afraid the virus can go through see-through walls?
Obviously, the problem with those bar see-through walls is the virus has just come straight through.
Right.
Well,
And-
no, I mean, the see-through wall is supposed to be like plexiglass.
Well, that's not the design they went with, is it?
Now
That's where they got it wrong.
we got bollards, and that's going to go right through the bollards.
Yeah,
You got a point.
big mistake. So anyhow, you are starting to see some of these xenophobic takes on the border as if this has anything to do with it. Have you guys seen some of that?
Yeah, David Horowitz. Did you see that? Our good friend David Horowitz.
No, I didn't.
He was complaining about these Chinese asylum seekers who were finally let in after waiting on the list for so long. Yeah, obviously, they haven't been anywhere near China in, 8-10 months probably. But,
Mhm.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
but they're Chinese, so it's probably inherent to their DNA.
Absolutely. It's in their blood.
They're particularly susceptible.
Well known.
So that's Daniel Horowitz. People should follow him on Twitter
Mhm.
just so they can be enraged.
If you really enjoy just horrific bad takes, he's good for those. Just real stupid.
Yes, he is.
I think friend of the show, Ben Shapiro, also said something about, oh, you want open borders now? Of course, nobody's arguing for open borders.
I am.
Well, right.
A little bit.
Sorry.
I'm making the thumb and index finger gesture right now.
Right. A little bit. Is that what you mean?
A little bit.
Thumb and index? Yeah, a little bit.
Mhm.
Well, I mean, nobody in positions of power, I should
Whoa,
say.
whoa.
Certainly
whoa.
nobody is.
I have a podcast.
The ultimate power.
Yeah, Joe Rogan. Hello, me
First
and
of
him,
all-
we both have podcasts.
First of all, I'm white. Second of all, I have a podcast. I mean,
And hey, we've endorsed Bernie Sanders just like Joe Rogan. We're practically the same,
all right.
except
So
for the racism, bigotry, and all that stuff.
And the working out.
I don't think even the most
I'm Steven's ripped.
Matthew is definitely not working out.
No,
I'm not.
no.
I was going to say before you guys interrupted me.
Yeah, but you're getting boring.
It's true. I don't think even the most ardent open border supporter would say, like, we should definitely let in people with really super infectious diseases, right?
Right.
Yeah, well,
Is anybody saying
no.
Basic.
is anybody saying that? don't
I think Andrew Yang. I think that is his position. He's trying to make a comeback. So,
good luck.
I don't think. Yeah, it's not going to work. But Avenatti,
Mm.
where's Avenatti going to be on Super Tuesday? Like,
Guys, we are all over the place.
Is he going to be in prison by then?
oh
probably.
yeah, I have ADHD. Where the hell do you expect me to be, Steven?
All right. So listen,
Okay.
guys. Now, sometimes I've had these bouts of paranoia about how, like, I'm an immigrant rights advocate and an immigration lawyer. Like, am I going to have to flee the country at some point? Like,
Yes.
Okay. That's
Well, you
not
can stay
helping.
here. You're just going to be in a camp. That'd be very comfortable.
Right.
But
Or
that's where
murdered.
you're going to live now, and it's going to camp. So
Right.
those are your choices.
But you're not going to have to play soccer. Soccer's not going to be allowed in these camps. So don't worry.
So then I saw this case, USV Sineneng-Smith. Have you guys heard about this case?
Sure have.
Matthew, I'm assuming you did not read the article that I sent you.
No, I've been too busy reading the Third Circuit kick
ass.
So
Okay.
we can get to that later because
We're-
the Third Circuit is like fixing all my problems. Go
Okay.
ahead.
Well, so this is a case of a lady. It sounds like she was doing some notario work down in California.
She's not good. Let's be clear about that up front. She's not good.
She's not good. She is not good. And she was doing something that makes up a huge part of Matthew's practice, which is filing labor certs for her clients.
Yeah, I actually took a CLE that she taught, so it was really helpful.
Okay, that's how you learn.
Exactly.
Matthew likes to just take people who qualify for nothing and file frivolous applications for them.
Well, who doesn't? I mean, we all got bills to pay, right?
Right. Well, I mean, I try not to unless payroll's around the corner. I have like a little window when I allow myself to
Yeah,
commit.
I find I have more money when I don't pay my bills. So
Okay, well, that's another.
I haven't tried that one. It's a good strategy.
Yeah, it is. A good
Actually, let me
strategy.
just say right up front, none of us do that. I want to be clear about that because we do get a bad rap as a bar for doing things like that. We're all very ethical people. I think just in a moment of seriousness here. Let's be clear about that.
me and Stephen have talked about this before, the whole filing asylum to get people into court and all that stuff. We don't do that. And I dare say I probably have $60,000 worth in fees a month easily walk out my door.
Yep.
So
Same. I will say I just reviewed a case just recently. Someone was told that was going to happen, but the guy had no qualifying relatives and just a complete asylum case. So the guy paid $8,000 for the privilege of being put in proceedings and deported. That's what happened.
Nice.
Yeah. And not even a pretense that a 42B was available. Just real bad. It makes me so angry, like legitimately furious.
I've had cases like that.
So the lady that we're talking about is not a good person.
Right.
And doing bad things.
Yeah, doing bad things.
Just one more example of cool lawyers doing cool stuff. There's a lawyer nearby who has like an amnesty wait list. And his whole thing is, I need a $500 a year retainer to be on my special list. Because when amnesty happens, we don't know if we're going to be able to get to everybody. And
I've heard of this one.
if I were to do that, I could easily get 100 people, I think, to pay me $500 a year if I were to sell it, which is, I mean, I'm not going to do that. But that's $50,000 a year.
Wow.
To do literally zero work.
You'll keep a list. I mean, that's hard. It's an Excel spreadsheet. Come on.
Yeah. I mean, I thought about that once. And I'm like, maybe that's a good thing. And then it just didn't make a lot of sense.
Right.
And then you're like, oh, I'm not a thief, actually. So
it actually didn't make sense because I would have to keep track of stuff.
Right.
I'm really bad at that. So
what's that?
Matthew was deterred from the theft by the amount of work that was going to have to go. So.
Yeah, I like easy theft.
Okay, so anyhow, guys.
Yes.
So this lady, not a lawyer, she's filing labor certs, which just so for people who don't know, it's not going to result in anything.
Not a thing.
This is stealing, right?
It is. Absolutely.
Well, there are labor certs that are legitimate.
Yes.
This lady's not doing those kind.
Right.
Okay. So it turns out there's a statute, aka a law, which says that any person who encourages or induces an alien to come to, enter, or reside in the United States, knowing or in reckless disregard of the fact that such coming to, entry, or residence in will be in violation of the law, shall be punished as provided in subparagraph B.
Holy shit. I don't want to... I've done that. I've actually done that thing. Is this a private podcast? Are we going to publish this?
Yeah, this is going to be published. We can bleep that out if you'd like.
Maybe anonymize me?
Yeah.
I mean, you guys have done that too, right?
Just so you know, I've never done that. So I don't know what you guys are talking about.
Here's where it gets real tricky. In the case of a violation, quote, in which the offense was done for the purpose of commercial advantage or private financial gain,
The best kind.
blah, 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 it's a felony and you can be charged up to 10 years. What if, for example, somebody paid you some money? That's a private financial gain. They came to you and find out they're undocumented. And you found out that if they waited a few more years, they could get their green card. This happens all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, because there's a petition that's coming current or whatever. Someone's
going to naturalize or child transfer on it. And if they leave, it's for 10 years. They're not going to come back probably.
Yeah, if they leave, they're screwed.
Right.
It's not like they can just wait out those years abroad.
Yeah. Sure.
And so you say, well, look, you got to just be patient and come back, see me in 2022 or whenever. Mm-hmm. It seems like you've just committed a felony, maybe, according to the plain language of the statute. So the Ninth Circuit, this lady was convicted of 3 counts of this, and the Ninth Circuit tossed out her conviction. She was also convicted of mail fraud. Like Matthew was saying, she's a bad lady. She got busted for something real, but the Ninth Circuit said...
Was she pretending to be a man? Oh
my God. Okay.
Mail fraud. Sorry.
That took me a minute. Okay. All right. It's been a long week.
I need a sad trombone.
You need is there a dad joke alert or something? I mean, yeah.
Give me a break. Life doesn't work that way.
Okay, so what were we even talking about?
I can't wait to tell that joke to my son. To be honest.
The Ninth Circuit says, guess what? That's unconstitutional because it's a violation of the First Amendment. Like, you can tell somebody to stay here or, whatever. And guess what? The government didn't just kind of roll over. They appealed, and it's before the Supreme Court. So there were oral arguments recently. And what do they always say? Bad facts make bad law. And in a case like this, the government attorney before the Supreme Court was kind of trying to say, like, well, this wouldn't really apply to lawyers, and it's only because she was doing a bad thing, and she's a bad lady.
I think you have to have faith in this Department of Justice that they're not going to unfairly target advocates like us, lawyers like us, right?
Well, they wouldn't allege that we're violent, except they did that here too.
Right. Oh. So, right, exactly. They did bring up some of the sort of watch list that the government has and the way that they've targeted al otro lado attorneys and activists. And the government attorney says, well, yeah, but those are all violent activists. People like Nora Phillips, who's been on this show, dangerous lady.
Yeah, well, I'm going to have to say something here. I was at this ALA event, and there was like a after-hour happy hour thing. And I saw Nora Phillips flip a person. She picked this person up and they were like a helicopter. She put them back on their feet, but she could have easily dropped that person on her head.
Like she spun them around like
you would do to your little kid. And this was not a little kid.
This is like some WWE.
Yeah. Yeah. So after that, I was like, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. And
put that lady on a watch list.
Yeah. So once the Supreme Court decides against us, we're going to know why. Because Nora Phillips is a badass.
So there's a lot of interesting arguments here about how...
Are there any good arguments?
Well, when you encourage somebody to commit a crime, there can be limitations on the First Amendment, right? You can be convicted of encouraging people to do things that are illegal. And so the First Amendment is not absolute. But here, one of the questions is, well, staying in the country illegally is not technically a crime. It's a civil offense.
Not yet.
Right. It seems like the justices are trying to keep the statute around rather than just tossing it like the Ninth Circuit wanted to do. But then it also, if they try and find a middle ground, there are people, for example, who have prior orders. And in that case, it seems like maybe they are in violation of the law if they're in the United States. And do we have then an obligation to tell them to leave? I don't know.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting. Do we have to tell them, oh, you have to leave? Or just I don't know. I mean, people ask me, can I work? And I'm like, not legally.
Right.
Of course, you've been working for the last 20 years, so I don't know why you're really asking me about it, but.
I've been known to say things like, if you're still here in 2022, you'd be able to do this, right? I'm not telling you to do it. I'm just saying if you were here.
Right. My thought is to just go real sarcastic with everything.
Mm-hmm.
That way I have a defense like, oh, you should totally leave the country. Rolling my eyes. The law said, making the jerk off sign with my hand and saying, you guys should totally leave the country.
So you're not going to change a thing about your practice. This is what I envision you doing currently.
So I'm technically, this is a form versus substance. So this is like a law school thing. I'm technically telling them they should leave the country, but I'm just doing it in a really sarcastic way. So they
convicted on the transcript of that one, but yeah.
Right, exactly.
If it didn't include the jerk off motion.
So how comforted were you guys by the fact that, this seems to be pretty limited? The DOJ attorney is saying, this is just, trust us, this lady's bad and we're not going to go after lawyers. Is that pretty comforting to you guys?
Not presently.
Well, I mean, the DOJ, even under the DOJ, I remember when they were at the Supreme Court talking about the ability to bring people back who have been removed, right? And they got up in front of the Supreme Court and they said, oh, yeah, we have a program for that. We totally do that all the time.
Sure.
And then it turns out that they don't. They didn't. They still don't.
Right.
They were completely lying about it. So, I know. It's weird. I mean, so to think a DOJ lawyer is not going to stand up in front of a court and lie is naive.
But we're doing a lot of things that are very good, including waste and fraud, tremendous waste and tremendous fraud. So we're doing that.
Yeah.
Donald. Thank you, Donald.
So
Well,
Now, having Donald on the show is awesome. Really helpful.
Diversity, lottery.
All right. So that's kind of freaky. I guess we'll wait to see how the Supreme Court comes down on that. But it is one of the tensions here. And there's a blog post that I stole all of this from. I'll put the link in the show notes because I don't remember the name of the blog.
it's Merel Kahn. Yeah, shout out to Merel Kahn. This is very well written. I just want to add that this stuff is about opening the door, right? And the government is not convincing me in this oral argument based on Merel's summary that they really care whether it applies to attorneys or not. It seems like when they're asked about that, the response they had was pretty perfunctory, and it didn't even cite a case that was in any way relevant. And then when they pushed on it, the government attorney actually talked about this watch list, including violent activists. So that's a little concerning.
Right.
You have to think about where these things are going, like where we're going to be in 4 years if we've got more Trump, right? I mean, that's what I keep thinking about with every one of these things. It's not what it is now, but look ahead.
And by the way, for the podcast, for the record, if anyone is listening to this podcast that is undocumented, that has an order of removal, we are not advising you to stay. You should leave right away.
You're making the jerk off sign with your hand?
Well, I mean, not in relation to what I just said, but yes.
Okay. No, I agree with you. Their defense of attorneys is not only not full-throated, but they seem to be willing to paint us with a very broad brush to suggest that we're all sort of violent activists.
I did not feel any better after reading this summary. I felt worse, actually. I thought it was going to make me feel better, but it did not.
Right.
I will say that.
Side note, have you heard about this case at US v. Henderson of a Border Patrol supervisor who had a house cleaner? Had you heard about this case? I'd never heard about it.
It's a big Boston thing. It's an amazing decision. It's well worth reading, even if you're not a lawyer. Like, it's really fun to read because it's about as anti-government as I've ever seen in a judicial decision.
Yeah.
Is it a district court or?
Yeah, district court decision. Yeah, Judge Whitlock just really lays it down about what an absolutely frivolous prosecution this was. And I believe this was under Ortiz, our U.S. attorney from a few years ago, who went really hard on everything. And she just was completely unreasonable on a lot of different stuff. But this one in particular, I mean, I understand, like, as a double standard, not wanting CBP officers to have undocumented staff or, people working for them.
Mm-hmm.
But in this case, I mean, it sounds like this woman actually wanted to help and ironically didn't understand immigration law at all, which I enjoy also about this.
Big surprise.
So a CBP officer didn't understand immigration law?
Yeah, who knows? Who knew? She didn't understand anything about it. She told the woman, you have a U.S. citizen child who's a very small child, so you should go to a lawyer and get your green card. That was her advice to her.
That's solid advice right there.
Yeah, this lady, she was not just some, lackey. She was a supervisor. She finds out that her house cleaner is undocumented and then says, hey, don't leave the country. Go apply for a green card that you don't qualify for. Rad advice. And then they tried to convict her under the same statute. And the district court judge was like, what? No.
Yeah.
So I thought that was a funny case. Well, funny.
There is a policy at CBP that you can lose your job or be suspended if it turns out you're hiring undocumented people, and that's a reasonable sanction. But this is out of control. That's too much.
Well, anyhow, we'll wait to see, I guess, how long our sentences will be. That'll be cool.
I'll see you in the camps.
Yeah.
We've never actually met in person, so this is going to be our chance, right?
Exactly.
Are they going to listen to the podcast from the camps?
Sure, why not?
I can't fit all of this equipment up my you-know-what, so I don't know.
A little bit smaller.
I mean, just a few at a time. You can do it.
I just want to add very quickly that there have been multiple efforts to make unlawful presence a crime, and I could see that happening under Trump at some point, if Congress goes even further worse than it is. So then we're really in trouble. I mean, seriously.
Yeah, right.
Then we're really in for it.
What else do you guys want to talk about? Let's talk about Matter of RAF.
Hell yeah.
Matter of RAF. Really.
Yeah.
Just so people know, I mean, just in general, these cases go immigration court, right? You present a case before the immigration judge. If you lose, you can appeal to the Board of Immigration Appeals. It's part of the DOJ. And then if you lose there, you can appeal to the circuit court. And also there's this cool thing where the attorney general can just scoop in and say like, no, I don't think so. Not here. And can issue decisions. So we've been getting a lot of these, right?
He loves them.
He loves them.
Sessions did too, of course.
Right.
I think the Sessions has already set the record, like within the period of time he did them, for how many there were.
And I posed you guys this question, and I don't think I got an answer, but have any of these been unrelated to Mexican/Central American type cases? I mean, I haven't seen anything that's like, oh, this will really affect the migration of Portuguese or something like that.
No, you're right. It's very targeted. I mean, that's really what they're worried about.
Right.
Seems like.
So this is a case of a Mexican man who's applying for relief under the Convention Against Torture, which basically says if it's more likely than not, 51% chance that you'll be tortured by or at the instigation of or acquiescence of the government where you'll be deported, we can't deport you. And this is a really high standard. There's lots of different things that the applicant themselves has to prove. And in these proceedings, the government basically has to sit back and do nothing because they don't bear any burden of proof. And so they usually don't really present evidence or arguments. And in fact, in these cases, I've had many times the government file evidence packets of articles they've clearly just Googled in like 5 minutes. Sure. And when you read them, they actually support your case. Have you guys had that?
Our DHS doesn't file those at all.
Oh,
so
right.
You got a leg on there.
Yeah. So the immigration judge granted relief and said, yes, it's more likely than not that this guy will be tortured. He has some sort of mental illness, and he was arguing that it was more likely than not that he would be institutionalized in Mexico and subjected to torture. Now, for people who don't know, the mental health care facilities in Mexico are terrible. They've been terrible for a long time. They've been promising to change them for a long time, but there is real stigma against people with mental illness, discrimination, and those things are carried out in the form of these public institutions where people are lobotomized, sexually assaulted, sterilized against their will, and worse. So the judge was satisfied with the evidence. The board was satisfied with the evidence.
Well, can I just say that's actually, as far as I know, I actually don't do a lot of Mexican cases, but good on those advocates for making that happen, both at the IJ and the BIA level, because that's a tough case under the Convention Against Torture, at least as I've always seen it applied. And I think there's actually a case on point from the BIA in the other direction. So the facts must have been really good for them here.
Yeah, and that's one thing that's always hard to know, what the record looked like, and
sure.
Did they have experts or whatever. But I have a case just like this, actually right now, ping-ponging between, it went up to the 9th, it got remanded, and then the same judge denied it again. But we've had multiple experts and hundreds of pages of exhibits. And, there is really strong evidence of this. And so the case gets granted. And again, these cases are really hard to win. And on top of that, the benefit really sucks. Like basically, this guy will have to continue to check in with ICE forever. He maybe gets a work permit. That's not always clear.
And if the mental health gets better in Mexico, those facilities, then they could send him back if they could prove it.
Right.
Right, he's not entitled to a work permit.
Right.
And you have to rely on ICE to sign your order of supervision, which sometimes they don't.
Right.
It sucks.
It sucks. Yeah. It's a sucky benefit. He never gets to get a green card. He doesn't get to petition for anyone. There's none of that. It's just sort of like, we think you're going to get tortured. There's a really good chance. So you can kind of stay.
So we're going to torture you just a little bit.
Right. Exactly. That's exactly right. So then Bill Barr sweeps in and says, I don't like this case. Actually, the board needs to take another look at it. And his problem with the case seems to be the whole question of whether or not the Mexican government is doing it on purpose or just torturing the person with the intent of torturing them, or just doing it because they don't really have the money to...
Or just for fun. I mean, that's an option. Could be.
Right.
So I just have a little background because I was contacted by someone about this. And the attorney who had the case before the IJ and the BIA, apparently, she believes that this is her case and she's trying to confirm it with EOIR. And no one's telling her, like, yes, this is your case.
What?
And she's reading it and she's like, that looks exactly like my case.
Weird.
But she can't really confirm that. So hopefully I can touch base with her, and if she gets a confirmation, I'd be interested to talk to her more. But yeah, so that's how it works.
He has no obligation to serve this decision like on the attorney of record.
You would think. Who knows? I mean,
if it's still on its way, it's in the mail.
Probably
a couple days ago.
I mean, I don't know. And the thing is, like, why bother with this case? I mean, as Matt was saying, these are really outliers. It wasn't a presidential decision from the board. It's nothing that's going to make new law. Probably 90% of the time, these types of claims are going to be denied.
Right.
So really, he's just being an asshole. That's all I can think. I mean, how does it get referred to? Like, I wonder who's a snitch that is like running to his office going, look at this, look at this.
Yeah, how he even found out about this is really remarkable. You know, one, it's a drop in the bucket, and somehow the attorney general ends up kicking it back to the board and telling them to do their job better. That's really crazy. I think it's the first one like that we've seen, right?
Yeah, I think so.
And again, every record is different, but in my case, it's exactly like this. We had an expert say it's not just a question of lack of resources. Mexico going, oh, we're poor, and so we accidentally torture people. They know better. They've been informed for a long time and they've been saying for a long time, oh yeah, we're going to totally stop doing this. And the expert in one of my cases gave an example of one of these mental health institutions that is torturing people. And down the road, there's like an HIV clinic with Wi-Fi and a cafe, and it's all really nice. And people can go there and receive all kinds of services as it relates to.
So why doesn't your client just get HIV?
I mean, that's what I told him. You know, it's your fault.
I mean, problem solved.
Schizophrenia and not HIV. But the point is, they have the resources, and the decision to allocate them this way is a choice that's based on discriminatory attitudes towards people with mental illness. But anyhow, this is really crazy that this happened. So that's fun.
Yeah.
Fun.
I mean, there have been good things that have happened.
Yeah.
Generally in the world.
Well, the Ninth Circuit just said MPP is illegal. Have you guys seen this yet?
Yeah. I haven't read it, so why don't you guys talk about that?
I haven't read it. I just read the headlines.
Yeah, I just skimmed it.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, it's illegal. That's what they said.
So there is a nationwide injunction, which means they can't do it. Now, they're probably going to try to...
I mean, they'll want to fast track it to the Supreme Court. I'm sure they're like filing their motion for stay.
Oh, I did see, though, I will say that the court built in kind of an injunction-proof order by saying that this isn't national. It's really only for the southern border states, which is 4 states. So I think that's a pretty good argument.
Nice.
It's only where it was. It is national, but they were just trying to at least insulate it a little bit against Neil Gorsuch, who just hates these things.
Right.
Yeah, but it will. Yeah.
So
we'll see where that goes.
Sure.
So the Third Circuit, they just ruled on Wednesday, I believe, that on the stop time rule issue, that is,
yes,
if you're put into immigration court and your notice to appear does not indicate the time and date that you're supposed to go to court. The Supreme Court last year or 2 years ago?
2 years ago.
Yeah.
Said that, like, hey, that doesn't stop time. And stop time, if someone has been here for more than 10 years, the statute says when you're put into court, when the notice to appear is issued, that stops your time. So if you're put into court today on February 28th, 2020, and you came into the United States on March 1st, 2010, you don't have 10 years. That cuts it off. But there are also other rules that they have to follow with this notice to appear. And the government just doesn't follow them, hasn't been following them.
Yeah, I mean, just to distill it, the law says when you put an immigrant in removal proceedings, this document has to have, 4 things. And 2 of them are a date and a time of a hearing.
Details.
And DHS just doesn't.
Yeah. And hasn't.
And the Supreme Court
and still isn't.
This is wrong.
And so then, I mean, what happened after that? Then the government came back and said, hey, but we give you a hearing notice and that will stop the time. So that has been what they've been relying on. And the Third Circuit just came back and said, no, that hearing notice does not stop the time. This might seem like, for those of you who don't practice immigration law, like whatever, eyes are glazing over. But for people who practice immigration law, this is huge because I have a lot of clients who, when they were put into immigration court, had not been in the United States for more than 10 years. And they have children and whatnot. But because immigration court takes so long, now they do have more than 10 years. So now they're going to be able to file, at least have a chance for good relief from the immigration court. So this is huge news. But I believe that the government is getting ready to file for en banc, kind of an appeal of the decision within the Third Circuit. I think they're going to do that. And then this issue is going to go to the Supreme Court. But right now, it's a good day in the Third Circuit.
Yeah, if this works out, I'm going to be sending some clients to Philadelphia, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And and then just today, the Third Circuit issued a presidential decision on asylum, basically strengthening the claims about people who have threats of persecution, credible threats of death and persecution as being a basis for asylum. So when you get really credible threats that someone's going to kill you, like the Maras or the government or whoever it is, those now in the Third Circuit, you can be found to have suffered past persecution. It's not quite that simple, but it's really a huge step for us in the asylum game here in the Third Circuit. So I think it's going to. So this week has been really good for the Third Circuit.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. We've had that in the Ninth Circuit for like ever. So I just fell asleep.
Yeah, we don't.
Not here in
So
the Third.
I just fell
That's
asleep
good
to
here.
whatever you were saying. No big deal. Yeah. So, I mean, there are some good things coming down and some not so good things. Do you guys want to talk about Stephen Miller or
Friend of the show?
let's talk about Stephen Miller?
Matt, you've been on a Stephen Miller high.
Well, I just discovered something that I think everyone should know. This is very important, actually.
Okay, let's hear it.
So, because I do teach immigration policy, and I was studying up for my class, we've been talking about nativism and restrictionism. And everybody should look up Prescott Hall. He's a very famous restrictionist from Boston many years ago. And he was actually one of the most influential people in the 1917 expansion of the public charge rule, which we know just kicked in on Monday. And Stephen Miller, of course, is the most influential person in the public charge rule as of 2020 to expand it again, pretty much his doing. And I pulled up a picture of Prescott Hall, and he is Stephen Miller. They are the same person. There's an easy explanation for this, obviously, that he sold his soul so he could sell the devil's immigration policy for eternity. But this appears to be fact, and it has now been confirmed by me.
Wow.
So, just to be clear.
Wow.
Yeah. This is, I'm
Breaking news.
breaking it here. Yeah. You heard it here first.
That's incredible.
He's a deathless ghoul. Yeah. I mean, you already knew he was a deathless ghoul, but now we know who he was before.
We need to line up the birthday. I think there's one deathless ghoul in between. We got to get birth and death dates to line up.
The missing ghoul. Yeah, we'll find him.
I mean,
Yeah.
Are you suggesting that the spirit, well, okay, they don't necessarily need to be born and die on the same date. Maybe the spirit could be transposed into an existing person?
When time's really a concept.
Yeah, that's right. It's a flat circle. It's the same guy. That's what I think. I think he's just managed to change identities.
Hasn't died. Wow.
Yeah, just several lifetimes. No, take a look at the picture. I'm telling you, same dude.
Right.
Just no glasses. Yeah.
It's easy to fake a death certificate.
I mean, if you live long enough, your eyesight gets better.
So there was this
That's true.
piece, oh my God. There was this piece in the New Yorker by Barry Blitt, and it's very interesting. I encourage people to read it. Really kind of terrifying and sad guy. One of the quotes that I thought was interesting, they're having a meeting about MPP and these programs to send asylum seekers to Central America, and somebody pointed out El Salvador doesn't have a functioning asylum system. And he said, they don't need a system. And he started talking over people. And then later he says, I didn't mean to come across as harsh. It's just that this is all I care about. I don't have a family and I don't have anything else. This is my life.
Except,
Well, I mean, he just got married, so maybe.
well, I figured this out. He had actually proposed to his fiancée either a few days before or a few days after he said that. So imagine sitting down and reading that in the New Yorker if you just married this guy. It's really something. Yeah, no, this is who we're dealing with.
Now, I wonder what your guys' takeaway was from this article, because on the one hand, he's painted as almost like a Rasputin, like he's got magical powers over the president. And all of these bureaucrats and people at the heads of these agencies, that there's nothing they can do to control him. And that seems like a pretty convenient narrative for people like Kirsten Nelson and generals and John Kelly. And these people are like, oh, wow, yeah, he's a really nasty guy. And if only I were in a position to do something about it. And I don't know. Part of that strikes me as maybe being
Bullshit.
You go back to, was it last week, or I don't know if we talked about it, about the 4 U.S. attorneys who were working on Roger Stone's case,
right.
how they resigned. There was this whole thing. All us liberals were going, oh, they're so courageous. Boy, they're standing up to the man. But they're standing up for, like, we're not being able to screw a guy over as much as we want to.
More prison.
Yeah, they want more prison. And, whether Roger Stone deserves it or not, whatever. But there are U.S. attorneys all over the country. There are some here in Philadelphia, right down the street from me, who are arguing tooth and nail for MPP and for these horrifically racist, bigoted, inhumane policies of the president. And Stephen Miller is not in their office yelling at them. So, he is a convenient scapegoat. He's a terrible human being. I hope nothing but the worst for him. But the rest of the federal government cannot hide behind Stephen Miller and say, this guy made us do it. Because really, fuck all these people.
Well, this actually leads some credence to what Matt was saying, that maybe he has mystical powers. Maybe it is a Rasputin type situation.
Mm-hmm.
He's, they've all looked into his swinging pocket watch or whatever. And
it's a family podcast.
Pentagrams, on all their doors or some sort of portal to the devil. They all have no choice. It is possible that he's figured out a way to manipulate the president in such a way that everyone else is, I don't know, afraid of what?
I agree with everything Matthew just said, but I would say that this is a consequence of being in a position where we have given the executive more power over immigration than it's ever had before. This is what happens, that one guy can take advantage of a weak president. The travel ban, the first travel ban, it was just him and Steve Bannon and a couple of congressional staffers that sat down and wrote that. And then that became absolute chaos, as we all know. Shut down the airports. Nobody knew what was going on. Might have included LPRs. Maybe it didn't, right? That's what we get because lawyers weren't involved. State Department wasn't involved. DHS wasn't involved. And he's exercised that kind of power all over the place with these different policies. And he is actually, according to this article, been obsessed with the public charge rule since he was 15 years old. 15. You think of the kind of stuff that you and I were obsessed with at 15. I was a nerd.
Right.
That's just like, how can I make it harder for poor immigrants to come here at the age of 15? This is who this guy is.
Did you have a closet full of mint in package Star Wars toys? Because I don't want to hear about your nerd bona fides, frankly.
I was really into Thelonious Monk. But so there is an argument to be made that this guy is wielding more power than any one person in U.S. history has ever wielded over immigration policy, because he has this singular mindset and that's all he thinks about. And I think there is something to it. He also has kiboshed a whole bunch of congressional deals over and over again and forced Congress, that the House especially, into everything just to be as difficult as possible. And we know that from the last round of fake discussions about this when they were pretending that they were going to pass the DREAM Act. And he pushed them into the hardest possible thing, that was the one that would have eliminated most of the family visas that no one was going to pass. And he was blamed for that. And again, there are a lot of shitty Congress people that probably just want to blame him for that didn't want to do it. But there is an argument to be made. And certainly if you read this profile and you read Border Wars also from November, it's a really good book. He's been there since the beginning,
right.
Opening for Trump, talking to Trump. He was with Sessions. He's connected to the CIS and Tanton Network crowd. He has a graduate degree in immigration policy from Duke University, for what that's worth, even though he's not a lawyer. So he at least has some understanding of where to poke the system to get the things done that he wants. But
right.
The truth is probably somewhere in between all of that.
So what do you think's happening right now in his office after reading the Ninth Circuit's decision on MPP? Do you think he's like throwing things? Do you think do you think he weeps for a while first before he rises up and,
he does have a
like
family
floats across the room?
Did you see the story? It says he was crying over H-1Bs, that there were too many of them. That sent him to tears. While the rest of us are watching family separation and everything else, he's weeping over H-1Bs.
Yeah.
What's wrong with this person?
Like you said, Matt, since the campaign, opening for Trump at these rallies, he was the one whose idea was to bring on victims of illegal aliens. He's been doing that since he worked for Michelle Bachmann back in the day. And, bringing them on stage at these rallies and having people weep for their tragedies. These are, you throw around Hitler and Nazis, but these are Nazi tactics, right?
Remember when Van Jones got run out of the Obama administration for being a socialist or communist?
Right.
Well, he also said the Republicans were assholes, so that was a mistake and also wrong.
And he's like, you look at him now, he's like pretty mainstream. And they could run Van Jones. I mean, Glenn Beck had, I don't know how many chalkboards he filled up with Van Jones stuff. And Stephen Miller just,
yes.
I mean, people criticize him, but he just doesn't seem to be affected at all. There's no outpouring. I mean, I don't know. He's weird.
Like with everything else with this president, it seems hard to make these things stick. I mean, there have been members of Congress and the Senate who have called for him to resign, and it's just not a story that has been able to stick around. But I mean, look, the president seemed to have agreed to a DACA deal, one with stipulations, and basically both sides were willing to give up something. And then the article paints a picture of Dick Durbin and Lindsey Graham going into a meeting with President Trump, and there's Stephen Miller, and along with some hardliners from the Senate, Tom Cotton and others, and the deal was imploded. I mean, this guy is a real problem, and I think you're right. The right take is probably somewhere in between, people like Kirsten Nelson, on the one hand, the article suggests that they were trying to work within the system and, trying to control Stephen Miller as best they could. On the other hand, when family separation comes down, and it wasn't like an accident, Kirsten Nelson gave him cover. Mm-hmm. And she could have come right out and resigned and said, this is immoral, this is wrong, I disagree with it. And that could have really changed the conversation. So the fact that he's been able to remain in power for so long is in part their own fault.
He's already gotten caught swapping white nationalist talking points with Breitbart directly, like pretty serious white nationalist stuff.
Wait. Aren't all his talking points white nationalist talking points?
When it comes down to it, yes. But I mean, like the stuff that came out with those emails, I'm so glad you brought up Van Jones, because that's, so far beyond, just so far beyond. So there's nothing that's going to make him voluntarily leave. It's just not going to happen.
Right. Anyways, people need to read this piece, I think, and be aware of what's going on. And then also, Trump's not just a dribbling idiot. Well, he is, but
yes,
all these people are making choices. He may be the most responsible. He may be the intellectual driving force behind it all, but these people all have to be held to account, I think.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and they won't.
And they will.
Just spoiler alert. Even if Democrats win, they're not going to be held accountable.
All right. Well,
what a great place to end things.
We like to end the show on a happy note. So there you go.
Perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on the show, you guys, and have a wonderful weekend.
Yeah. Everyone wash your hands.
May your coronavirus be short and non-deadly. And Matthew, good luck keeping the fingers out of the nose. I know that's a struggle.
It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen.
Maybe just lean into it, The sooner you get it over with, the better.
Good for you. The hands in the pants might not be as problematic, so you're safe.
Right.
I just eat a lot of tacos, so I'm in trouble.
Oh, boy. Yeah, no, I was just glad they didn't say anything about keeping your hands out of your pants. Just on the face. Not a problem for me. That's a Matthew thing. Anyway. All right, guys. Have a good one. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah. Good times. Thanks.
Good night. Good luck.